Hi everyone, it's Sonic Academy. You are listening to Connor Dalton from Glowcast Audio Mastering. We're a small audio mastering company run by myself based in Glasgow, Scotland. And I'd like to give you a brief introduction, I guess, to the world of mastering. I don't want to focus too much on the sort of technical the boring side of mastering, I guess. I'd rather try and focus a bit on giving you some tried and tested tips, techniques and tricks that I use on a day-to-day basis. A little bit of history about me, or a little bit of background, I guess. I've worked with people from Daft Punk to John Digweed, Carl Craig, Slam, Silicon Soul, right down to sort of bedroom producers who've only been making music for a couple of months. So I deal with a wide range of mostly electronic music, mostly techno, some house, some trance, some drum and bass. So I've been running the studio for about 3 years, and before that I'd studied music for 4 years at degree level, and I also went to the Sound Training Centre in Dublin, sort of SAE equivalent college. So I'd like to talk to you today for about an hour about the sort of specifics of what I would do to achieve a successful master. Now, let's start by asking, what is mastering? To sum it up in about a sentence, mastering is the final attempt that you have at sonically altering a piece of music. So it's the final attempt that you have at improving, correcting, and getting the best out of a song before turning that song into a product, a physical thing, a piece of vinyl, a CD, or a digital file that can be uploaded to Beatport, from which all future copies will be made from. So mastering is the final attempt that you have, the final sonic attempt at improving a piece of music before it becomes the version from which all future versions will be replicated from. Let's read out some of these. Well, error checking, there's an element of that as well, making sure there's no pops and clicks and hiss and sloppy fade outs at the end. When it comes to CD, this is hugely important because for example, the record label could be creating 2,000 copies of this CD, and if there's a massive skip on one of the tracks or a massive pop or something, chances are the record label could turn around to you and say, this is your fault, we have to bin 2,000 CDs, you're financially responsible. So there's an element of making sure that technically everything is cool, there's no mistakes, there's no errors, and everything sort of feels properly spaced. All the tracks are properly spaced on a CD, so it flows nicely and there's not huge silences between songs and so on. And to the final point here, mastering is the final step in processing, error checking and presenting audio. It is the process of optimizing audio before preparing and transferring recorded audio to a data storage device, which is the master. And this is the source from which all copies will be produced via methods such as pressing, duplication, replication or distribution. Okay, so basically mastering is the final attempt at making something sound better, correcting mistakes, and then turning a song into the final version of that song. What type of things will that include? It'll include editing minor flaws, pops, clicks, little sloppy edits here and there. As long as they're not too extreme, you can kind of use tools like declickers and so on. Isotope do very good tools in this range, so do Waves, to remove tiny little flaws such as that. There'll also be an element of removing hum and hiss. Usually if there's hardware involved, if it's all digital, these things don't really become a problem. If it's sort of, if there's issues like with hardware, sort of machine noise and so on, and this can be improved, reduced in the mastering stage without too much damage to the sonic integrity of the song. There's also adjusting stereo width if necessary, if a track feels particularly narrow, and it might benefit from some enhanced high end in the sides in the wider spectrum. This is a common thing to address in mastering. We'll discuss techniques and tools used in doing so later on. This is just a sort of an example of some of the things that we'll go through on a day-to-day basis here. There's something that I would probably, the main things that are my absolute essential tools would be equalization, EQ, and compression. These are two things that I would use without fail every day. Songs won't need compression. Some songs won't need EQ. That's quite rare that they won't need EQ, because if mastering can be constructive and not corrective, you're on to a winner. If I can enhance something with EQ, then brilliant. I mean, chances are if the track's been produced brilliantly, I'll need very little EQ, but it's always nice to sort of have that option of improving and enhancing areas that I think are really important to the song, adding a little tiny bit of nice bass resonance and so on. There's various different styles and types and advantages and disadvantages of EQ and mastering. There's surgical and tonal and sort of, everything in between, and linear phase and minimum phase, but let's talk about those later. These are essential tools to my day-to-day operation, and I'd like to give you later on some of my sort of secret weapons when it comes to EQ. So let's move on beyond this. What does it include creatively? How would you prepare your file before sending it off for mastering? To be honest, I don't want to dwell on this side of mastering too much within this tutorial. It can become quite boring, and I don't want you to go into sort of classroom mode where you just like switch off. I'll get this out of the way, and then I'd like to start talking about techniques and listening to some examples. Sample rate 44.1 kilohertz or above. I mean, you could argue until you're blue in the face about the advantages of 96 kilohertz recording and production and so on. To me, it's not essential as long as it's 44.1 kilohertz or above. I'm happy. Much more importantly, I prefer the bitrate to be higher than 16-bit. Again, I don't want to dwell on this too much. If you're really interested in this, what I would advise is send me an email. You can get me at connor@glowcast.co.uk. I'd love to talk to you about this, but I also don't want to bore you to tears, so I'd rather talk to you about that in private. And I don't feel bad about emailing me. I quite enjoy talking about these things, the benefits of sort of 24-bit recording and so on. But let's not dwell too much on this. Also very important, I need a bit of headroom between the loudest peak, the highest peak, and 0 dB. If I don't have this, what that means is your peaks are being squashed against the top, the ceiling. That reduces my options and the tools that I can use at my disposal without causing problems. So this is very essential. Leave a bit of space between the loudest part of the song and 0. Don't just rattle everything up into the reds and send it off, because then if the file is smashing against the ceiling, there's very little I can do without causing further distortion and further problems. So let's move on. Now, what's the difference between mastering and mixing? Mixing deals with all the individual elements of a song. Okay? Mixing deals with the bass drums, the backing vocals, the main vocals recorded on 3 microphones, the acoustic guitar, the electric guitar. Mixing deals with all the individual elements of, I'm sure you know. Mastering, however, deals with only one element, one song, one track. A track that's been completely mixed and mastered to the best of the producer's ability. But mastering deals with the stereo file of the song. So as you can imagine, your options are a little bit more limited, which is probably a good thing to limit your options at this point. Limiting your options at this point means that things are final. Anything that you do at mastering shouldn't be a drastic decision. You should have sort of sussed out all the nonsense and EQ'd and compressed effectively within the mix to allow the mastering engineer to sort of subtly enhance rather than tackle massive problems on a particular instrument. So now I would like to talk to you. Let's look at some examples basically of a mastered song, a pre-mastered file and a mastered file, and we'll go from there.